We have breaking news to share with you on this Saturday afternoon. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and 4 European leaders have issued an ultimatum to the Russian Federation. I'm not making this up. They have demanded that Putin agree to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire by Monday. By Monday. I had to double check on this when I saw the headlines. When I saw some of the comments, I thought I surely have misread this because I know that a lot of these guys were meeting over the weekend. They made some statements yesterday on May 9th because they were trying to upstage the Russians' Victory Day parade and all that. That was to be expected, and I frankly didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, what are they going to say that's anything new? Well, apparently they have something new. And in fact, just this afternoon, the Washington Post is reporting that Ukraine and its allies have demanded a 30-day ceasefire backed by the threat of sanctions. So according to the Washington Post today, leaders of the Western nations, including the United States, demand Saturday that Moscow implement an unconditional 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine starting Monday, May the 12th. If the Kremlin fails to comply, the leader said they would strengthen sanctions against Russia's banking and energy section. Zelensky said, quote, "We together demand this from Russia. We know that the United States supports us in this," Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said. Standing alongside Zelensky in Kiev were representatives of the Coalition of the Willing, which includes British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Said that the Russians must stop all attacks by ground, sea, and air on Monday. And you just have to, I'm sorry. You see, I'm actually struggling to find words to say this. I still cannot believe what I'm reading. These are the guys that have been on a complete unbroken route militarily, tactically on the ground for, I think it's over 30 months now. Consecutive months with no exceptions. Even on when Ukraine tried to have an offensive and they broke into to the Kursk area in August of last year, stayed there for 7 or 8 months. But at the end, it was a complete and utter failure. They tried to break into Belgorod. That has been failed. They have tried again just in the last week or so to go back into Kursk. That has failed as well. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the progress continues to go to the west because Russia continues to accelerate its activities. And I showed you several times in the tactical updates over this past week where there was a couple of days in particular, the only 2 days I saw the numbers, one that the Russians had reacquired 20 square kilometers, one day 29 square kilometers of territory, on another day, single day, and I don't know what they did the rest of the time. I don't know if it was more than that or less than that, but we can understand because of the context and the attacks continue on, that some number of square kilometers continues to be lost. So the pace is continuing to pick up. Now, on May 9th, Russia put on this demonstration of strength. They have closing ties militarily with North Korea, deepening ties, especially with drones and some of the other help that they're getting from Iran. President Xi Jinping is still in Moscow right now, as I understand it. They're continuing to talk about deepening military cooperation, certainly economic cooperation, and other things. Who knows what's really going on behind the scenes? But they're still they're talking because they have an interest in both Russia and China succeeding. So everything certainly appears that it's on this track for Russia. Now, again, this is also in light of the fact that just a few weeks back, you had the U.S. General Cavoli, the leader of the U.S. U.S. European Command, who told the United States Congress, and we put that on the screen there, where he said that the Russian side with its allies are outproducing artillery shells by a factor of 3 over the cumulative West, everything that we can do. We know for sure because the Ukrainian commander, Syrsky, has said that they cannot even force mobilize enough people to offset losses. We know that the Russian industrial capacity across the board is, again, according to Cavoli, producing 1,500 tanks this year, 3,000 other armored vehicles this year. Nothing even close. Not by a factor of 3, but I'm not sure that it's even being offset at all on the Western side. I've heard only a handful, like 20 and 30 here and there, vehicles coming over, armored vehicles from the West. And whatever capacity Ukraine has by itself is obviously badly damaged by the constant bombardment of Russia throughout. So one has to wonder, what in the world are you talking about? What are you threatening them with? We have threatened, remember, Joe Biden famously, right at the beginning of this war, talked about how he was going to cripple Russia, was going to bring them to their knees, and all these sanctions. And what happened? They rebounded. They hit the Western economy worse. That's why you have Robert Fico from Slovakia and Hungarian Prime Minister Hungarian Prime Minister Orban always talking about, they're really angry about the fact that they have to pay more for energy to be able to run their economy because of these sanctions. And you see the German economy may already be in a recession, but it certainly has something close to zero growth, while the Russian side, even though it has high interest rates and high inflation, they also have high growth at about 4%, dwarfing anything that the entire European Union has been able to put together. So everywhere you look, economically, militarily, industrially, the Russians are on the top. We have tried this, folks. The West has tried everything they can to sanction Russia. Do you think that some new sanction now is going to work when none of the others did before? I mean, what rationale and logic is going on here? I mean, this should start to alarm us. This should start to alarm us, not just to get, a roll of the eyes or, well, these guys are dumb. This should start to alarm us. The people that are in charge of the Western world right now, I'm talking like the main ones, Germany, UK, France, these guys, and now Poland, these guys are just becoming more and more detached from reality. And one has to wonder, what other kind of decisions are they making with this kind of mentality, that they're sit there with such arrogance and pompousness that they actually feel justified in issuing a demand to Russian President Vladimir Putin at this day. Now, I'm going to show you, you talk about some arrogance here. I'm going to show you, this is what Zelensky himself released just today also in talking about how he's going to get this done.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for standing with us. So today we'll focus on how to build and guarantee real and lasting security. Key points: 30-day ceasefire backed with sanctions pressure, strengthening Ukraine's air defense, and increasing international defense support for Ukraine, including the investment in Ukrainian defense production, security guarantees and contingents, and of course we'll discuss our unity with the United States and backstop. Dear friends, there's no need today to explain the whole situation in detail. Everyone understands what's happening and what needs to be done.
Yeah, but do they, though? Do they understand what's happening, what needs to be done? Because it sure looks to me like there's a lot of lack of understanding. Everybody understands the situation. Well, I don't know. I kind of think that we do understand the situation here. And it's very detached from reality, from the version that you're trying to pass by. I mean, you just look at the landscape. You've already tried every kind of sanction in the world that you can imagine. And it didn't make any difference. Russia was hurt in some areas, there's no doubt, but they adjusted, they made changes, and then they got stronger as a result of it. And now and this is stuff that's out there all over the place in the West. There's all kinds of scholarship on this. It has made them, if not sanction proof, very strongly sanctioned resistance, because they have mechanisms in place to offset the leverage that the West would have on them. What are you going to do now? He said something about energy. We have some energy sanctions. Okay, what energy sanctions? Do you remember, and you probably don't because many in the West have forgotten this by now, but relatively early in the war, we were going to bring them to their knees, the Russians to their knees, because we were going to put these, not just sanctions on oil, but we were going to put a price cap on it so that they wouldn't be able to get enough money and their war machine would starve to death. Did you ever wonder why you never heard anything after that? Did you ever wonder why the war machine wasn't brought to its knees? Why it didn't come to a grinding halt? Because Russia figured a way around it, like they always do. Every time you take an action, there has an equal and opposite counteraction on the other side. It's not surprising. It's not unusual. This is how things work in the real world. But now then, we have experience and we can look at Russia We can look at this situation. We can see how they've mitigated against that threat. So then what now deep into the fourth year of this war, do you think you're going to do now that you haven't done before? Well, as it turns out that there's a Forbes reporter was in Russia, perhaps for this for the May 9th celebration. But somebody today went and said, hey, wanted to talk to Dmitry Peskov and get their view to this. And he said, yeah, we're aware of it.
We have to think about that. We have to think about that. These are new developments. So we have our own position. Yes, definitely. We see that Europe is confronting us. Europe is actually confronting us very openly. We feel it, we know it, and we are quite accustomed to that.
And do you think that Russia can be pressured in this case?
Well, if you look during the history, during the old history, during the modern history, you'll see that so Russia is quite resistant to any kinds of pressure.
Yeah, and he's right there too. They're resistant to all kinds of pressure. He's saying the same thing, but we just talked about a minute. They're aware of this. They've figured out ways they would resist pressure, and especially because of the battlefield situation I just described to you. What rationale can these Western leaders have to say we're going to put pressure on you now? That we think this time it'll work, when it's the same categories even that has been tried before. And what do you think is going to happen? Does anyone in that group actually believe that Putin is going to go, golly, fellas, boy, I didn't know you were going to actually hit me like this. I didn't expect that. But hey, I had my parade, so yeah, we're cool to go. Okay, fine, sure. We'll just go to a 30-day ceasefire. Russia has said from the beginning, and never anything different, that they would not do a ceasefire. They called it, Lavrov calls it a road to nowhere. Putin himself in December said, we're not worried about a ceasefire. We want an end of war negotiated settlement that addresses the root causes. And they say the root causes are NATO inside of Ukraine, the treatment of their ethnic or Russians that are living within the area that in some areas that still are Ukraine, some that now they consider were, etc. And they're saying there has to be a demilitarization and a denazification. And they say, once you talk about all those things, and sure, we'll do that. They've already said they're willing to entertain the possibility of a 30-day ceasefire, but only if all of these details have been addressed first, none of which have. So obviously, these guys aren't stupid. They may be delusional, but they're not stupid. They certainly know that there's no chance that Vladimir Putin is going to give in to any kind of a pressure from a position of strength. At least I hope they don't. I mean, I hope that this is just some sort of gambit, some sort of play, because they want Russia to reject this. Maybe like Zelensky said in that clip I just showed you, where he's saying, well, if Russia doesn't agree to this, then that'll show everybody who really doesn't want an end to the war. Well, yeah, I mean, Russia's not hiding that fact. That's not something you have to discover. They're saying, no, we're not going to we're not going to do a 30-day ceasefire that will primarily help the Ukraine side. Why would we do that? From a position of strength, who would do something like that? No, we're going to keep the pressure on. They've openly said that. The Russians have openly said we're going to keep the pressure on. We had Ambassador Polyansky, I believe, on our show, the UN ambassador to Russia. And I pressed him on this, and I point blank asked, if you don't get through negotiated settlements what you consider your minimal terms, will you keep fighting? And he looked at me incredulously like, well, of course we will. I mean, we've never said anything different. So they're not hiding this. So these group of people can't not know what's going to happen here. So then the question is going to be, what is their play here then? So Putin won't accept it. So come Monday morning, there's not going to be a 30-day ceasefire. And then what? They're going to put these other sanctions on it. What do they think is going to happen? Do they think that's going to have some impact on the Russian offensive? Because even some of the things they're talking about here, air defense. Additionally, Zelensky in some of these that same interview was talking about he wants more air defense systems. He wants security guarantees. He needs this industrial capacity to continue on this 2030 situation thing. Look, folks, you might not be a viable military 5 months from now. Forget about 5 years from now. And if these guys think that Russia's refusal on Monday is any different than the refusal they're already saying, so I don't understand what they're gaining here. Now, the other wild card in this is the claim by both Zelensky and the Europeans there that America has agreed to this. They claim that they made this ultimatum after talking to President Trump. Now, if that's true, then we have another level of problem, because Trump has been talking about, and we've been chronicling it here, that they're, potentially days away from being ready to walk away. If the two sides don't come together and make an agreement, then we're going to walk away. Now, it could be that the U.S. is playing the Europeans and Zelensky by saying, sure, we'll agree to that. And then when Russia doesn't, then they'll say, okay, I said that we would walk if the two sides didn't come together. This was our last play. Now we're walking. I hope that's what's going to happen, because if that's what the play was, there are better ways to do it. I certainly wouldn't have done it kind of, I guess I won't say I guess deceptively against even our own allies. I'd much rather be very clear and open about it. But if that's the path he goes, that's the least bad path. Sure, we'll walk now. We'll see what's going to happen. I don't have any idea. I don't have any insight of anybody in the administration in this particular issue, so I don't know what's coming. But that's certainly what needs to happen, because if it doesn't, if Monday comes and we levy the Europeans levy these new sanctions, and if we potentially add to that and we levy sanctions too, then the White House has lost the leverage that it had. It has lost the ability to later on then say we're going to walk away. If you engage in sanctions and go to what these and add to what these European guys are talking about doing, then Russia's not going to listen to you anymore. They're not going to talk to you, because now then you're not trying to find a negotiated settlement. You're putting more pressure on them. And we've already seen in the last week or so, the U.S. has added $350 million F-16 package, a $50 million other military package, the air defense systems. And if now then they also add in this, then Russia's going to say, then you're not trying to find anything. You're trying to do just a light version of what the Biden administration did. And who's to claim them? And then the only thing you leave them is saying, all right, we're just now going to continue on. We're just going to march. Maybe they're going to increase the pace. But what you're going to do is you're going to guarantee more Ukrainian men will keep dying in large numbers. Because I've not seen any evidence that the United States is going to have any kind of like a $61 billion package like Biden had a year ago this month. So even if these little nickel and dime compared to $350 million F-16 packages only for the F-16s, and that we've seen has had virtually no impact even on the tactical battlefield, certainly not the operational or strategic. And now then, this, if you talk about here's more air defense, and it's just a pittance. It was one air defense battery that was in Israel. Now it's going to go there. It's going to have a point help in one place in all of Ukraine. But it's having a consequence, because if Russia sees you keep doing these little nickel and dime things to help the Ukraine side, so you're not compelling them to come to an agreement, you're not compelling them to reach a settlement, and now then you are adding more sanctions on the Russian side. That's what they'll see. And so you're going to lose your leverage, because now you're not seen even plausibly as somebody who can bring it to an end, because you will have shown that Trump will have demonstrated that he can't rein in Zelensky, that he can't rein in the European leaders. They're calling the shots, because this is what they've been saying since he was elected. And it's been Trump who's been saying, we might walk and we're trying to get a negotiated settlement. These guys have never wanted a negotiated settlement. They have always pushed for more weapons, ammunition, funding, all the kind of stuff, and that they want to put pressure on Russia. Zelensky comically says, we want to have a negotiated peace. We want to have a peace, a peace with honor, all that kind of stuff. Except that his definition of that, of course, is the surrender on the Russian side, which is delusional. There's no a better way to put it. There's no kinder way to put it. There are worse ways I could have put it. But that's the kindest one. It's an outright delusional. So you're guaranteeing that Russia is going to keep fighting, and you're guaranteeing that your men are going to keep dying, and you're guaranteeing that your country is going to keep losing the war. You're going to keep losing territory, whether fast or slow. I don't know which. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But one of those two are the options. There's not an option to where Russia goes, okay, we'll stop. I mean, it's ludicrous to suggest that, but that's what these people are doing. And so I really, really hope that they were using President Trump's name and his positions without authorization, and that he's really not behind this. Because if he is, then there's going to be more trouble. That's the story that we have right now. All of this stuff is going to continue to evolve. We'll see if I hope that we find something tomorrow on some of the Sunday talk shows here in the United States, where some of the senior administration officials usually go out and talk, and we'll be real eager to see if anybody talks about, did we authorize this? Are we in agreement with this? And if so, how does that play into trying to find a negotiated settlement? And then, of course, come Monday morning, we'll come back to you and give you the latest update and latest information. But I mean, unless I'm desperately wrong, Russia's not going to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. The war will continue. More Ukrainians will die, and I'll be more frustrated. But we'll save that for Monday. Thanks ever so much for coming and being and joining us here on this late Saturday afternoon. But I did want to bring you up to date. Didn't want to wait till Monday on all this. So now you know what's going on. You know as much as we do. We'll see you next time on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.